Wake up, everybody! It's World War III!
Did The Simpsons predict World War III in 2025? Welcome to the most amazing channel. Today, we explore a question that's been stirring debate. Did The Simpsons predict World War III in 2025? As tensions rise globally, many wonder if a major conflict is imminent. But what if someone had already seen this coming? Some claim The Simpsons foresaw the outbreak of World War III in 2025. In this video, we'll break down their alleged predictions and see if they align with the world's current situation. Could The Simpsons have truly predicted the future, or is this just another piece of apocalyptic speculation? Let's find out. Number 1. What did The Simpsons say about 2025? So, what exactly did The Simpsons predict about 2025? Well, the specifics are often debated, but there are a few key statements that people point to when linking them to the idea of World War III. One of the most quoted predictions is a statement that reads something like, "A time will come when the world is on the brink of collapse, and 2025 will mark the beginning of the greatest global conflict of this century." That's a pretty bold claim. Right. But when we dig into their writings, we see that this prediction is not as clear-cut as it may seem. There are other phrases attributed to The Simpsons, such as, "Nations will rise against nations, and the forces of power will converge in a way never seen before." A statement some interpret as a reference to military conflict. But again, it's not specific. There's no mention of which countries will be involved, or even how the war will unfold. It's general, open to interpretation, and could fit a variety of global scenarios, including the tensions we're seeing today. In some reports, The Simpsons are said to have predicted that 2025 would be a turning point, a year of reckoning, as one account puts it. This echoes concerns about the growing instability in global politics, escalating arms races, territorial disputes, and economic breakdowns. The prediction doesn't directly name World War III, but it certainly sounds like a warning of some major conflict. Now let's compare these statements to what's actually happening in the world today. We're seeing geopolitical tensions rising between superpowers like the US and China, Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine, and North Korea's increasing military tests. There's no doubt that the world feels like it's on the edge of something significant. But here's the thing. These types of tensions have existed for decades. So, while it's tempting to look at The Simpsons' words and see a prediction coming true, we also have to consider that these kinds of warnings are not uncommon. Could The Simpsons simply have been predicting a general global conflict based on trends that were already happening in their time? In the end, the question remains, did The Simpsons predict World War III in 2025, or did they just describe a recurring pattern of global tensions that anyone could have seen coming? That's the big question we need to answer. Number 2, analyzing the accuracy of their prediction. Now that we've explored what The Simpsons allegedly predicted about 2025, let's dive into whether their words actually align with the current global situation. Could they have truly foreseen World War III, or are we simply interpreting their vague statements through the lens of today's fears? First, let's examine the global political and military events unfolding today. We're witnessing growing tensions between major world powers, particularly the US and China, and Russia's ongoing aggression in Ukraine. These events certainly have many people worried about a potential conflict. North Korea continues to test its missile capabilities, while Iran's nuclear ambitions remain a concern for the West. In a way, it does seem like The Simpsons' prediction about nations rising against nations could be relevant here, as the world seems to be at the brink of something significant. However, here's the tricky part. These tensions have been escalating for years. In fact, they've been building since the Cold War. In the 1980s, experts were already warning about the possibility of global conflict. So, is it possible The Simpsons were simply echoing the common fears of their time, predicting the inevitable tensions that come with superpower rivalries? This kind of prediction isn't necessarily a rare one, given the patterns of human history. Next, let's look at expert opinions on the likelihood of World War III in 2025. While it's clear that the world is far from peaceful, many political analysts and historians argue that the likelihood of a world war is low. They point to the increasing role of diplomacy, international organizations, and the global economy as reasons why large-scale conflicts between major powers are less probable today than they were in the past. Nuclear deterrence, for instance, has changed the way nations interact on the global stage. While tensions are high, the threat of mutual destruction keeps all parties in check. As for the Simpsons prediction itself, it was remarkably open to interpretation. They never named specific countries or conflicts. Their words could be applied to any period of rising global tension, making it difficult to say for certain that they were talking about World War III specifically. In fact, many of the statements attributed to them are so general that they could apply to any major geopolitical event over the last century. So, was their prediction accurate? In one sense, yes. The world does face rising tensions, and the year 2025 is certainly filled with uncertainty. But in another sense, it's difficult to say if the Simpsons truly foresaw the future, or if they were simply expressing what was a common concern at the time. The lack of specificity means that their prediction could easily be applied to almost any global crisis. At the end of the day, the accuracy of their prediction is up for debate. Did the Simpsons foresee World War III in 2025? Or are we just projecting our modern fears onto vague historical prophecies? Number 3. Could this really happen? So, the big question, could World War III really happen in 2025? While the Simpsons prediction certainly raises eyebrows, it's important to consider whether the current global tensions actually point to a full-scale conflict, or if this is just a case of fear-driven speculation. Let's start with the geopolitical tensions that seem to be fueling these concerns. There's no denying that we're seeing serious global issues today. The US and China are engaged in an ongoing trade and military rivalry. Russia's invasion of Ukraine continues to strain relations with the West, and North Korea's missile tests are becoming more frequent. Add to that the volatility in the Middle East, and it's easy to see why people are worried about the potential for a major war. However, when we step back and look at history, things might not be as dire as they seem. Yes, tensions are high, but world wars don't usually start over isolated conflicts. They typically involve large-scale alliances and escalating diplomatic failures. While the current events are unsettling, most experts argue that the conditions for a global war simply don't align the way they did before previous world wars. In fact, some believe that diplomacy, economic interdependence, and the threat of nuclear war act as strong deterrents to full-scale conflict today. One of the key factors that has shaped the global order since World War II is the rise of international organizations like the United Nations and the establishment of various treaties and frameworks aimed at preventing war. The Cold War was a perfect example of high-stakes tension between superpowers, yet both the US and Soviet Union carefully avoided direct conflict, in large part due to nuclear deterrence. Today, those same deterrents remain in place. The threat of mutual destruction through nuclear weapons has made countries more cautious in their approach to military conflict. Now, let's consider counter-arguments. Some experts believe the risk of World War III is lower today for a few reasons. For one, the nature of modern warfare has drastically changed. Today, cyber warfare, economic sanctions, and proxy wars are more likely than traditional battlefield confrontations. The reliance on nuclear weapons has also led to the development of more sophisticated methods of managing conflict without engaging in full-scale war. Diplomacy and economic pressure play a much larger role in resolving global disputes now than in the past. Moreover, looking at past failed predictions of global conflict is crucial. For decades, people have predicted World War III based on rising tensions, only to be proven wrong. The Cold War, for example, was filled with dire warnings about an impending nuclear catastrophe, but it never escalated into an all-out war. Even in more recent history, there were predictions that the Iraq War would lead to a broader conflict in the Middle East, but that never materialized into a world war. So, could World War III happen in 2025? It's possible, but it's not certain. While the geopolitical landscape is volatile, it's not exactly like past periods leading up to global wars. The current tensions are certainly concerning, but the mechanisms of modern diplomacy and warfare are strong enough to prevent an all-out global conflict. In the end, while the Simpsons prediction might sound eerily prescient, it's more likely that their words are a reflection of the timeless fears of global instability rather than a clear roadmap to World War III. So, after examining the Simpsons' alleged prediction and comparing it to today's global tensions, what do you think? Did they foresee World War III in 2025? Or are we just reading too much into vague statements? It's clear that the world is facing. Did the Simpsons truly predict World War III in 2025? Or is it a misinterpretation? Are we on the brink of a global war? Or is history repeating itself in another way?